I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. Stop agreeing with yourself. Stop agreeing with yourself.
Hello and welcome to Glass Half Full Reviews, where we don't let anything come in the way of a good attitude. Today, I will be reviewing Obvious Child.
He's like so Christian. He's like a Christmas tree.
So be the angel on top.
I'm not the angel on top. I'm the menorah on top of the tree that burns it down.
Obvious Child has been described as the feel-good abortion rom-com of the summer. And I mean, I don't really know how I can argue with that, because I guess that's kind of true. I will say up front, I am not as much of a fan of this movie as a lot of people are, because this was so indie. I felt the same way about last year's Frances Ha, which critics were going, "Oh, it's in black and white, it's got to be wonderful, she's dancing through the streets." But I was so bored by several parts of that movie. Actually, the good thing about this movie, Obvious Child, is that I really wasn't bored for almost the entire movie. It has a very good pace, and it flows well. But, getting ahead of myself, let's talk about the movie. So, it stars Jenny Slate as a young aspiring comedian named Donna Stern, who's that sort of vaguely Jewish type that isn't really Jewish in any kind of meaningful religious way, just enough as an identifier, which is typical of this sort of thing. And I found her sets, considering I'm pretty sure she didn't write them, by which I mean the actress, not the character, of course, to be very tiresome, cliched, not that interesting, filled with a little standard kind of shock value, like, well, you know, blah, 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 periods, abortions, and it was like, okay, you know, this is something that has been going on since the 70s, 80s. It was something that The Simpsons parodied with Janine Garofalo in that great episode where Krusty quits. Oh, Jay Leno beating a clown. It was good. It was good comedy. But this stuff was a little tiresome. I liked a lot more the guy played by her friend, who is also her friend in real life, Gabe Liebman, who I thought he was very funny. He had a good personality that came across in this movie. So, what's the deal with Donnie? This is one of those kind of slice of life type of movies. You know, it's a few weeks in the life of this character, and you sort of see them go through some troubles and trials and tribulations and things of that type. So, what happens? So, Donna is just breaking up with some boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. The point is, she gets really drunk, she meets this very nice, handsome, bland guy named Max, played by Jake Lacy from The Office, who is one of the least interesting characters in the later, less interesting seasons of The Office, and they hook up, she gets pregnant, so now she doesn't want to keep it, so that's sort of where things start to go. And the fallout and how she deals with it, who she talks to, who she doesn't talk to, and talking to her parents, who are played by Richard Kind and Polly Draper. And I really felt like this movie was pushing to say, look at this, look how honest and real we are. Look at all these things we're saying. Like, this is how, no other movie has done this before. Well, that may be true, and I'm not saying that a movie shouldn't do that. I just didn't find this movie that charming or funny. I mean, it was well acted, I suppose, but it just wasn't as funny as I think it was trying to be, and there were a few parts where I just didn't really feel like I was connecting with the characters. I didn't appreciate their choices. And when you can't connect with the characters like that, you sort of don't care about what happens. So whether or not she wants to keep the baby or not, and who she tells, and all the dramas of various little background romantic comedy stuff, I don't care about her relationship with Max. It doesn't matter to me, because I don't care about the character. I mean, I don't find her that talented as a character. I actually do think the actress is pretty talented. But, blah, 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 blah. I didn't really like that part of the movie. Now, for the most part, there was a pretty good sense of the movie going along and knowing what it was doing. There was one very weird scene with David Cross that was so out of nowhere that it would be better at home in a kind of more tragicomic or absurdist type of tale, and it really did not fit here, and it sort of suddenly the movie just ground to a halt, and you're like, what's going on here? Why is this weird scene happening? If you've seen this, you already know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, well, you'll know, because it's the only scene with David Cross in it. It's a classic example of the Alvin and the Chipmunks Award for wasting David Cross. which is, a terrible movie that wastes David Cross. So I don't really feel like the movie holds together that well. But, in the scheme of things, it's certainly a lot better than many of the other types of things out there. I appreciated what it was trying to do in terms of having a bit of that romantic comedy element and background and environment without actually explicitly going for all the same cliches. Except, of course, it did have almost the exact same cliches. It just also happened to be about this woman contemplating getting an abortion. So it was almost like, okay, well, we're just putting this extra thing here just to make it like, oh, okay, yeah, so there's that. That's how we're actually original. And yeah, it does make it more original, but the whole underlying structure of the movie is really just the same as you would have seen from many of these like kind of indie romantic comedy things where, it can be a little dreary, but kind of nicely shot. And I don't know, it wasn't my cup of tea. All right, let's get into my 5-point breakdown.
5-point breakdown.
All right, number 1. So, in general, people do pretty well here. I mean, it isn't really a weak acting job. I guess you could call Jake Lacey's role kind of weak, but his character was also written really weak, and it was very underwritten, and it was very blah. It was nice to see some stuff from the people playing Donna's parents, Polly Draper and Richard Kind, and I usually see Richard Kind in like this immensely exaggerated, nonsensical role, like from that Michael J. Fox show that I forget the name of. And I don't know, it wasn't really my kind of performance, but I thought at least that Jenny Slate did a good job of bringing her character to life, even if I didn't really find the movie trying to tell me that she was funny with these sets that I didn't think were that good really work for me. I did like her supporting friends. It was interesting to see Abby Hoffman playing a character that wasn't crazy. I feel like I haven't seen that since Sleepless in Seattle. I mean, she was in that. I mean, all these other movies she's been in, she just plays a really weird person. Even in Girls recently, another just very weird character. So it's nice to see that, a more subtly written character. Of course, the downside to that is that she was given very little to do at all. So that's the downside. All right, number 2. So this story is typical, and it's romantic comedy-ish, and it's about this character, and it's a few things that happen. Like I said, it's nothing that interesting. It's about how the characters are dealing with it, and we're just looking at their interactions and relationships. And that is where the movie should be succeeding or failing for this kind of genre. And I would say it almost succeeds. Almost. All right. What about number 3? Like a lot of these kinds of things, it's not fancy, but it has a nice, almost, casual look as you can see New York around, and, you get a little bit enmeshed in that environment at times, and sometimes it seems kind of claustrophobic, and I don't think intentionally. Just, it's limitations of the budget. You can't get that cinematic. But the truth is, I've seen some, very impressive stuff, like from Inside Llewyn Davis, for example, where you really get a sense of the environment in a very interesting and evocative way. And I just didn't really see that here. It was just sort of, whatever. It's another indie style. So, what was that? All right, number 4. So, walking out, I was thinking, that was all right. It's okay. I mean, I like the idea of that something is happening here with a female protagonist, but I just would have hoped it would have been a stronger movie. And that, of course, brings us to my conclusion, which is, if this is a sign along the path of let's be more honest in general about these kinds of stories, then great. Happy to see what comes next. But as it stands, this isn't it's not that interesting to me. So I guess my final recommendation is, it's okay for an indie kind of thing. So that's basically it. Thanks for stopping by.